right. What I want to talk about tonight is where are the elites taking us economically? And I think we want to just kind of look at a few things, especially in an election year, what's happening economically to the United States and to the West, for that matter. And I think everyone in this room can kind of understand that everything seems to be going up, and that's not just me as an old man saying, get off my grass, kid, or or just being a grouchy old man complaining about the prices of things. There is tangible evidence, obviously, that things are skyrocketing in price, and people are not being able to afford living anymore, not just in California, but around the world. It's not just an American phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon that's happening. And unfortunately, I'm sure you guys are aware of what's happening economically, but people think like they act as if they're living in normal times. And what's getting ready to happen is a perfect storm economically. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what they're doing and some reports that came out of the WEF that's pretty shocking, and how they're going to get us to own nothing, okay? So this came up, and I want you to see this is somebody posting how economically problematic the things are becoming. So he says, we're a family of 6, a man, woman, 2 teen boys, 1 teen girl, 1 preteen girl. Some examples of how much it costs. Subway or Chipotle, $70. McDonald's, $60. Pizza joint, $100. Bar style type of place, $130. Outback, 200 plus. Bi-monthly Sam's Club, about $700. Monthly groceries, about $700. A movie, about $120. Yeah, that sounds about right, and you can't just keep rolling like this, okay? You can't just keep rolling $70 at Chipotle. Okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. Now, this is someone makes $500,000, so you have to, okay, whatever, man. But they did this as kind of a breakdown that even if you're somebody that makes $500,000, it doesn't feel like that anymore. And they broke it down, and the numbers are really small, but, okay, this is like if they do everything right. You got 401k contributions, you got salary after 401k contributions, you have a tax rate. So if you and your wife pulled together $500,000 after taxes, net salary is $278,000. Then you go to your expenses. They have child care for 2 children, $42,000. Food for 4, $23,000. Mortgage, $60,000. Home maintenance, $5,000. Let's see, property taxes, $20,000. Property insurance, $2,500. 3 vacations a year, $18,000. Well, I think what they're doing is saying that a vacation is costing about $6,000 for whatever, and they do it 3 times a year. And again, this is a person making $500,000. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Gas is, I think, $2,000. I think life insurance, $3 million term, $2,500. Clothes for 4 people, no fancy bags, shoes, or threads, about close to $10,000. Children's lessons, about $12,000. Charity, $18,000. Undergrad, graduate student loan debt, $32,000. Miscellaneous, $10,000. Total cost, $271,000. What's left, $7,300. So again, this is just a budget breakdown of a couple that makes $500,000, and you can see that, well, they don't have much left. Okay, well, then take it down to our level. Okay? And the point is, if you take it down to our level, you're not left with $7,300. You're left with like $1, right? That's it. When it's all said and done, right? And you're like, okay, man. If that guy's coming away with $7,000, how much worse am I off, right? And that's what I think the thing was trying to point out is you can poo-poo someone making $500,000, but when it comes to you and I, and we have to pay for childcare, and we have to pay for food and mortgage and property taxes, there ain't much left after that. Nothing's left. It's gone, man. And this is what's starting to break down people in society. The thing is, I think I asked Terry this on the show one time, is this going to affect the way people vote? Because it certainly would to me. And any rational person would say, hey, something's not right, man. If I'm throwing down $20 for a Subway sandwich, that's going to get my attention. And I don't care if I'm Republican, but maybe the people are so blind they think everything's rolling just fine, I guess. I don't know. Another thing that came out, and it said that total assets held by the top 1%, if the top 1% wealth had kept pace with inflation, it would be $4.3 trillion. And so you can see what's going on. It's insane. So what it's trying to say is that the rich keep getting richer, okay? And okay, yeah, wow. So the American Thinker had a nice article, if you want to read the whole thing, and I think it broke down a few things that maybe tells us where this is going. So from 2007 to 2016, the net worth of the richest Americans increased by 20%, while the lower 80% decreased by the same percentage, widening the wealth gap considerably. So that means you and I got worse, okay? Now, this is not some Marxist tactic that the American Thinker is trying to say and, come against the elites. It's not trying to say that. It's trying to say that the system now is eliminating the middle class. It has its target on the middle class. And basically, it's making everyone poor except the elite. That's what's going on. That's what's being generated. So it continues on. It says, increasingly wealthy globalists pressured the government, and now the top 1% own over half of the U.S. wealth, while the top quintile owns 94% of the wealth. The bottom 80% have their wealth tied up in their homes or vehicles, and most suffer from chronic debt. So this gap keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and 1% own half the wealth of the United States. Interesting. I want you to pay attention to the gap, okay? The wealth gap concentrates ownership in a small group of people, and so it does to industry as well. More and more large corporations, as you guys are seeing, are dominating, right? The mom and pop sector is going out, right? You have the fast food chains like Chili's or whatever, and they're doing that. But if you have a private restaurant, you're not doing too good. That's what it's trying to say. As small companies suffer and are saddled with increasing regulations, larger corporations benefit from the monopoly of power. Less competition and the ability to set prices artificially high if they want to. And that's what we're watching. Whether, remember, you used to have a hardware store, and versus Home Depot or versus Lowe's, and you just had a mom and pop hardware store. Well, that guy's out of business now because Home Depot and Lowe's has got him beat, but that's corporatism, right? So this is what's starting to happen on every level almost, okay? So here's the interesting thing. The wider the wealth gap goes, the more our social and political fabric will deteriorate. How is that? So the bigger the gap between the elites and us, the more politically and socially our country degenerates. Why? I mean, I understand economically how we degenerate, but it's trying to say, no, you don't understand. When they have all the money, it will corrupt the society morally and politically when they have all the money. What do you mean? How so? Since I thought we're just talking about economics. It's because of this. If you look at the wealthiest people in the world, they are not Christians. A lot of them are atheists, agnostics, whatever you want to call them. They're globalist elites. They want to rule the world, and they're imposing their version of morality on us through their money because they own everything. So if they own the corporation can push the DEI score on every employee. And what are you going to do? Well, then you're going to go work for a mom and pop hardware store? No, I'm sorry, you can't go to work for mom and pop because they're out of business. You only have a choice between Lowe's and Home Depot, and they both practice DEI. What do you do? So what ends up happening is these elites who are getting concentrated all the money are now calling the shots for us morally. They're the ones that have created the DEI and the ESG scores and pushing everything. Okay, so according to the Great Gatsby curve, increased inequality will result in less upward advancement from one generation to the next. That this is precisely the conditions that exist when a democracy is overtaken by an authoritarian rule. So what he's trying to say in the article is, look, you're going to have this curve, and I think I put the curve on there. And when you can see the United Kingdom and Italy and the United States are on the top of the Gatsby curve, okay? And the Gatsby curve depicts the gap between the richest and the poorest of a particular country and the ability of the individuals from the lower income backgrounds to move up the economic ladder. Countries on the left have less of a gap, and countries on the right have a greater gap in which wealth is concentrated among a relatively small percentage of the population and less upward mobility. So what he is saying then, going back to this, is that these conditions where there's less upward mobility, like for instance, like if you said, you know what, Brandon, I really have a hankering, I'm going to start an ice cream shop. I really want to go into business. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with that, because you're going to have a lot of upfront money. Then you're going to have to go through all the regs to get this thing going. And like people that have said in San Francisco, they've tried to open up an ice cream shop, and it took them 2 years to get through the regs. And by the time you get through 2 years of regs, you're worn out, and you don't want to do it. It's a discouragement, right? And I can tell you this, working with the county here in Bakersfield, forget it, man. I mean, if it wasn't the Lord, you would just give up and say, forget you guys. You guys are crazy, man. I'm going to a different state. You guys are nuts. But anyway, what happens then, they're saying is you have this gap, and then you have all of us having no upward mobility. So then we have to go work for someone. It's not like we can go out and start a business, or we can start farming. Hey, am I going to start farming? Okay, go for it. You're not going to start farming. That's gone. You have to have a whole bunch of capital to buy land and then start that operation. You just can't go out there and start anywhere. That doesn't exist anymore for just the average person. Or I want to start my own gas station. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with that, right? So the idea of upward mobility, that some middle-class guy could start a business and do well, that's vanishing. And what they're saying is that at the lower generations of the millennials and Z, they don't have a chance to start anything. They're going to be working for somebody, unless there's some genius, or whatever, and they can invent something, I don't know. Maybe that will happen. But for the majority of people, they're going to have to work for a corporation. They're not going to be independent owners. So what's happening in America is we're losing independent private business owners now. And that gap is getting worse. Well, then what's left? What's left? If I can't start my own business, I guess I got to go work for somebody? A corporate. So here's my option where this is going. I'll either have to work for a corporation or I'll have to work for the state. Because if I can't start my own business or whatever, then what am I left with? You don't have any choices anymore. It's what it's trying to say. And there was a time in America where you could do something like that possibly, and a bank would take a risk on you and loan you. They're not doing that now. Like even the loan for this church, we don't get it from a bank. We had to go to a Christian organization to get a loan because the banks won't loan us any money. So if I didn't have access to a Christian organization and a family that had connections with that organization, dude, I'm still in a school. I'm still in a school because no bank would ever loan me any money for this building. None of them. They would never take a risk like that. And so that kills the entrepreneur spirit in American people that want to do well and want to be independent, right? So this gap is widening. And look at this, man. Like the United States is up there. along with Great Britain. So the idea, like in Great Britain and Italy, there's no upward mobility. You're stuck. Whatever level you're coming in at, you're stuck. You're not going any further than that. And so the gap is getting bigger and bigger economically in the United States. So what's happening? Well, the article goes on, and you probably already know this, but they call it the triple I curse. I think that's pretty good. And this is what Biden's doing: inflation, immigration, and inflated stock markets. And they're all on purpose. So let's talk about inflation. Notice this. Since 2021, the government spending has ballooned. National debt has climbed $35 trillion, as you know, and increases $1 trillion every 100 days. Now, I've heard other reports that it increased $1 trillion every 90 days. So somewhere in that neighborhood, about every 90 days, 3 months, somewhere in that neighborhood, we go in debt another trillion. And the Biden administration thinks this is okay. So what it's causing is incredible inflation. The dollar basically has lost 23% of its value. That's why things are costing more for you personally. The wealthy can withstand inflation to a certain extent, but most households in the lower 80% cannot. It's killing them, right? So nearly 2/3 of households do not have enough savings to cover 3 months out. That's scary, because if you can't cover more than 3 months, what happens if we do an economic collapse? That's where we're talking about, with people not preparing for what's coming. Because if you can only cover 3 months out, that's a problem. That's a major problem. And you need to think how you're going to protect yourself, because these idiots keep doing this. Now, in a weak attempt to control inflation, the Federal Reserve then comes in and tries to raise interest rates, right? But this just made purchasing a house prohibitive and forced regional banks to lose value on Treasury notes they held. It didn't help. So now the Fed is caught behind a rock and a hard place, right? So in the website Economic Collapse, deer in the headlight moment, they had a deer in the headlight, by the way, picture, which that's exactly what we're at right now. The Federal Reserve is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Why? Because it says this: if the Fed pushes rates higher, interest payments on our $34 trillion, or now it's $35 trillion national debt, could spin wildly out of control, and bank balance sheets will be even worse condition than they are now. So for instance, First Republic just bit the dust. Literally thousands of other small and mid-sized banks are in serious jeopardy at this point. So it would be suicidal to hike interest rates at this point. But if the Fed were to reduce rates, well, here's the problem with that. That would be like injecting jet fuel into a raging fire, he says. Our ongoing inflation crisis is absolutely crushing working families. So we have a problem there, and then we have a problem with immigration, especially illegal immigration. So you have 8 to 10 million illegal aliens coming in, and the problem is, what's happening? The current policy of open borders delivers cheaper labor for globalists, okay? So Biden and his crew want that, and more votes for the Democrats, obviously. Available jobs are going to foreign-born workers and not American citizens, in what is called the displacement theory, resulting in even lower wages and purchasing power for many Americans. You know, the funny thing is, if you say you're against illegal immigration, or this needs to be halted for some time, or we need to reduce the number, because no one's saying we can't have immigration, but we can't have this. We can't have what we've had for the last 3 years. That's going to crush us. We can't sustain it. Okay, what they're saying is, well, you're a racist. But am I really a racist because I don't want the system to collapse because we can't carry it? It's an economic issue. And the funny thing about it is, notice that it delivers cheaper labor. Here's the problem. They claim that they're the non-racists of our society, the elites, right? They claim that. They say we're the racists. The funny thing about this is they're the most racist individuals in the planet, because with all the Latino and Black and Asian workers that we have, American citizens, they undermine that demographic by pulling in illegal aliens. So if you want to say who the racist is, who's inflicting the most damage on American American blacks, American Hispanics, American Latinos, American Asians. They're the ones being hurt by the immigration. So if you want to call anyone a racist, it's them. They're hurting those populations. And I don't think they even care, do they? So let me ask you this. Why do they care more about what's going on in that border and letting people come through than they do in Detroit downtown or Chicago downtown or New York? Why do they care more what's there than what's going on in these, or San Francisco or whatever, right? It's called projection. They call us racist when they themselves are the racists. They are, because they won't help our American citizens at all that are hurting. I mean, look, we give the average illegal alien $2,200. We don't even pay our vets that. We don't pay our vets that, nor do we pay our American citizens that. Why are we paying people that are not American $2,200, free education, come here, get free medical, all that other stuff to our own people? Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, Cloward and Pivens, that's right, Cloward and Pivens. What do you mean, Cloward and Pivens? Well, Cloward and Pivens were in the 60s at Columbia, and their reverberations through Columbia reverberated all through Columbia, and it was the concept of collapse the system. You bring enough people in on this welfare system to collapse it so you can go to a different system. And that was the Cloward and Pivens strategy, and that's what they're doing now with immigration. Now we go to the stock market. Like Solomon has said, I'm not a financial advisor, but Solomon had some wise things about finances. And he said basically diversify, didn't he? Put your stuff on 7 ships. If one sinks, you still have 6. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. Have you ever heard that? Okay, that's conventional wisdom, but that actually comes from Solomon. So people who are totally invested in the stock market have put all their eggs in a basket. This is an inflated stock market. Despite inflation and higher interest rates, the Fed still prints cheap money to boost the stock market and benefit the rich. But job and GDP growth results from massive government spending as company productivity and consumer demand slide. Not only does government spending spur inflation, but increasing government regulation hampers supply, making fewer goods cost more. This combined effect of inflation and lower demand creates stagflation. So why is the stock market soaring? Because the Fed's modern monetary theory of printing more money is doing that. So it's fake. It's not real. So if you have all your stuff in stocks and it crashes, you're going to lose everything. So what does Solomon say from the Bible? Diversify and understand what biblical wealth is and start diversifying into biblical wealth. Okay, so here's what's going on. The triple I's has created an unstable U.S. economy to benefit the super rich. In just 3 years, since Joe Biden got in, the wealth of the top 1% has risen from 30 trillion to nearly 45 trillion. Okay? And here, this is the amazing thing that they keep coming up. Where they say, well, we're going to get the rich. We're going to get them. We're going to, that's what they always say. We're going to get the rich. They're going to pay their fair share. So his solution that he just came out with, and this was 2 days ago, I think, or 3 days ago. Solution is a 20% levy tax on unrealized gains of assets, stocks, and real estate and collectibles that exceed over 100 million. What? What did he just say? Yeah. The Biden administration is proposing a tax on unrealized gains. Did you see what I just said? Unrealized gains. Not capital gains, unrealized gains. Well, Brandon, I don't have a stuff that exceeds over 100 million, so this isn't going to affect me. Ho, you don't understand. Because what they're getting a pushback, and I don't even know if this is legal. I don't think this is legal constitutionally, that they can do something like this, but who knows in the world that we live in. So what they're saying is, look, it's only going to affect about 700 American citizens that have assets over 100 million. And what we're going to say is this: if they have assets over 100 million, every year they get taxed 20% regardless of capital gains, just for holding the asset. Just holding the asset. Okay. Yeah, well, that's not going to affect me. I clean the floors at the cotton gin, Brandon. I don't make $100 million. I'm never going to make $100 million. You don't understand. You don't understand that when they propose something and they say, well, it's only going to affect the rich, they eventually expand it down. Okay? So it's a Hegelian dialectic. We're going to go extreme over here, and people say, well, that's not going to affect me. But then they pull it back and get you used to it. Well, that's only going to affect them. And then 2 years from now, they're like, we're going to open that up more. We're going to open it up more to where it's going to affect if you make $1 million. If you make $1 million, we're going to hit 20% on that unrealized assets. You understand what they're saying? It's not capital gains. Let's just pretend that you're in this category and you own a yacht out there, okay? You don't sell the yacht. You don't do anything. It just stays anchored to this thing. But they, every year, will get it for 20% of that value of that yacht. That's pretty scary. If you own a house, if whatever you own, everything will be taxed by 20%. That's what they're saying to those people. Well, we're just only going to affect the rich. Look, they're thinking they're going to do it universal. Okay, that's where this is going. If this passes, I don't know if this is even constitutional. This is crazy. This is like someone did cocaine and then said, "We're going to do this," right? It's crazy, man. Wow. So this concentration of wealth is happening through both people and industry, so we see that, and it harms society. The corporations, super wealthy, are buying influence, obviously, and doing it through education, right? The radical environmentalism. They're weaponizing, energy, right? Like gas and fossil fuels. They're weaponizing against that and attacking that and eliminating that. And really, you want to kill our freedom as you attack our energy. That's really where you cut our knees out, and they're doing that, right? So Biden is cutting all this energy. We're at the lowest level of reserves in oil, right, ever, and he's doing his job to satisfy the greenies, but at the same time, he's want more oil from the Middle East. It's like, duh. I mean, why don't you just, So he's trying to please the greenies, but he knows he can't just totally divorce himself from oil because he can't lose an election because of gas. Stupid, so stupid. But here's what we find out. So these elites that are making all the money, they're the ones leading to the wokeization of America. So these billionaires, the corporations, their fundings are funding in critical race theory, transgenderism, DEI, drag queens, illegal immigration, climate change, getting rid of law enforcement and whatnot, reduction of law enforcement. They're the ones behind all of this, okay? So 10 billionaires have pledged over $135 billion to focus on education, politics, and the environment. And it's all woke. 3 foundations mold the K-12 educational systems as they and others spend over $4 billion annually to engineer their Marxist vision of the future. Likewise, charitable contributions to higher education exceeded $58 billion in 2023. This is what's happening to the colleges and universities. It's because of these elite, wealthy individuals that are changing the narrative. And of course, we have useful idiots that go along with this. But again, where is this all going? I can tell you where it's going. This is biblical, okay, what's happening here. Notice what's going on in Congress. The average member of Congress receives 93% of his or her contributions from big, often out-of-state donors, including dark money from unrevealed sources and PACs. This is why we're not getting our politics back. Okay? Similarly, billionaire spending to members of Congress increased over $1 billion in 2022 and will mount much further this year. Add this to the 12,000 Washington lobbyists who spent $4.3 billion in 2023 and understand why the recent $1.2 trillion omnibus bill included millions of dollars of woke earmarks. That's what's happening. It's the elites that are doing it to America. It's the elites that are taking down America. It's these guys, right? As part of the elite, but there's more than that. And then they're pushing their power and their influence through everything. So, what's getting ready to happen? Well, there's a distinct possibility that the government spending an insurmountable national debt will ultimately collapse the dollar. And I think that's intentional, right? So, the cumulative effect of expanding wealth gap of what Biden's doing, what he's got a recipe for disaster, is to create a permanent underclass in America, kill the middle class, and that is exactly what the globalists for the New World Order want, is a permanent underclass. You're born into this world, there's no upward mobility, and that's the way it is until the day you die. But yet the elite will have everything. I think I read that somewhere. Keep your eye on the banks, it says, because they're sitting on mountains of commercial real estate loans that are going bad because the value of commercial real estate has collapsed over the nation due to work from home and impacts of higher interest rate and related inflation. So the banks are having a major problem. All over America, stores are closing, businesses are fleeing, our core urban areas, everything's dying. And you know the funny thing is, China's buying up a bunch of gold. Why? Why is China buying all the gold? Why are they doing it? Why is Russia doing it? Why? What are we doing, right? I wonder. So check this out. World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, the German, remember? He comes out with a new report that 98% of the world's central banks have agreed to implement the globalist long-awaited dream of a cashless society. Most central banks, such as the U.S. Federal Reserve, are quasi-governmental institutions anyway, and they're basically owned by private billionaire bankers. And so this new report that came out is saying, we're going here. And 98% of the central banks are with us on this. I think you better pay attention. I think we all better pay attention to what they're doing. This is a controlled collapse to get us to this. Saying. So here's the report. It's like something like a 83 or 93 page report talking about this. See, the funny thing about these guys at the World Economic Forum is they tell you what they're doing. We're going to do this. And you know what? No one believes them. It's the enemy telling you, we're going to attack you. This is where we're coming. So check this out. This is what the report states. And I pulled up the PDF. You can get it, put it on your computer, and read it for yourself. Here's what the report states. Over 98% of the global economy central banks are researching, experimenting, piloting, deploying central bank digital currencies to determine how to modernize the capabilities of and improve access to central bank money. With this backdrop and recent survey finding that there could be 24 live CBDCs by 2030, the importance of clarifying the role of central banks and wholesale CBDCs in the next generation of wholesale financial markets is underscored. The WEF report discusses that converting to this new digital system means all physical assets will eventually be tokenized. Okay, I'll explain what tokenized is. In a scheme meant to bring more billions in profits to the elites on Wall Street. The tokenization of assets involved creating digital tokens representing the underlying assets of real estate, equities, digital art, intellectual property, and even cash. So basically, all your assets that are tangible will be then tokenized. BlackRock, don't trust them. That's Larry Fink, right? Signaling that tokenization will be the next generation for markets. Let's have Larry Fink explain tokenization to us.
Imagine turning your house, stocks, or even a bar of gold into digital tokens. Sounds futuristic? Well, it's happening now. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, is stepping boldly into the blockchain world with their Bitcoin ETF and advocating for more cryptocurrency ETFs. Their CEO, Larry Fink, envisions these moves as mere stepping stones towards a groundbreaking concept, tokenization.
Let me be clear. I think ETFs are step one in the technological revolution in the financial markets. Step two is going to be the tokenization of every financial asset. And to me, this is where we believe it's going. So we're looking at Bitcoin, we're looking at ETFs in the same manner. These are technological changes that can allow us to move forward.
What exactly is tokenization, and how might it transform our approach to real-world assets? At its core, Tokenization involves converting the rights to an asset, whether it be bonds or real estate, into a digital token on a blockchain network. It enhances liquidity, turning previously illiquid assets like buildings or artwork into easily traded tokens. Traditionally, bonds have been the domain of large financial institutions, often out of reach for everyday investors. Furthermore, the traditional bond issuance process is costly, involving intermediaries like clearinghouses and underwriters, not to mention significant legal fees. By tokenizing bonds, the asset becomes available to retail investors, increasing their liquidity and affordability. Smart contracts, which can be thought of as self-operating sets of rules coded into the blockchain, function like a vending machine. Just as a vending machine automatically dispenses your chosen snack after you input the correct amount, smart contracts automatically execute agreed-upon actions, such as distributing interest payments, thereby reducing the costs associated with issuing bonds. This not only makes the process cheaper for borrowers but also more profitable for lenders. It's a win-win in the world of finance. And speaking of wins, if you're curious about how the blockchain is transforming bonds, don't miss our in-depth video on this topic. Another asset class, among others, heading towards tokenization is real estate, as seen with the St. Regis Aspen Resort. Here, 19.9% of the property was transformed into Aspen coins, each representing a share in the luxury resort. Tokenization transforms real estate by turning traditionally illiquid assets into liquid ones, enabling fractional ownership. For example, investors can now own a portion, like 3%, of a property, making it easier to buy and sell these fractions. Tokenization also democratizes real estate investments. By breaking down properties into tokens, it lowers the entry barrier for investors, broadening market accessibility. Moreover, it cuts out many intermediaries such as brokers and agents, reducing costs and simplifying transactions. Furthermore, the blockchain technology underpinning tokenization ensures both transparency and security. Its immutable ledger offers equal access to asset information and robust protection against data tampering, enhancing trust in ownership records and transaction history. As we reach the end of our exploration into the world of asset tokenization, let's examine what BlackRock CEO Larry Fink highlighted. We have the technology to tokenize today. If you have a tokenized security and identity, the moment you buy or sell an instrument on a general ledger, that is all created together. You want to talk about issues around money laundering. This eliminates all corruption by having a tokenized system. What are your thoughts on this vision of a tokenized future? Do you see it as the key to eliminating financial corruption and enhancing security? Or are there aspects of this technology that you believe need further exploration or caution? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.
Oh, that's a great idea. I can't see anything wrong with that at all. What did he say? A democratization of ownership. Translate that. A democratic ownership. Yeah, you don't really own anything. You might own a piece of something, maybe 1% of that car, but really the government owns the rest of that 99% of that, or whatever that might be. But this tokenization of tangible assets, you understand where this is going. It's the idea that you're not going to own anything, and this is going to be able to stop cartels and drugs and all this other criminal activity. Like the video just said from this is a video from BlackRock, okay? That's a video saying it's all going to be nice, and this is going to be great because it's going to allow you into the market and to digitalize your assets. Excuse me, I don't want to digitalize my assets. I want real assets. I want real things that are tangible. I don't want to digitalize my car and then that be, out there in the digital world and I not own that. And so what they're doing is very nefarious. Very nefarious. And here's a problem with it. If you tokenize everything, they have to answer 3 questions. Who's going to regulate this? Number 2, what are the guidelines? And what is the scalability of this? What do you mean? We're just going to do it in Bakersfield, or we're going to do it as a nation, or we're going to do it Mexico, Canada, and America? Or are we going to do this globally? Yeah, you're right. You know exactly where this is going because I just read you what the central banks are wanting to do. The central banks are wanting to tokenize everything and digitalize everything, which means if they tokenize every asset you have, it means you don't own anything. And the regulatory framework is not going to come from Bakersfield. It's going to come from the World Economic Forum or the UN or some centralized bank over there that's going to give us the regulatory framework and the guidelines. And an ESG score will be all there and the DI score and all that. Okay, so here's another thing. And we'll end on a couple things. Rachel Neuer said this: Western societies may not meet with a violent, dramatic end. In some cases, civilizations simply fade out of existence, becoming the stuff of history, not with a bang, but a whimper. And here's where I'm going. Remember I talked about the gap and that the gap's increasing? Revelation chapter 6. When he opened the third seal, I heard a third living creature say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a black horse. And he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand, scales representing the economy, right? And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." This is part of the seal judgments, obviously, and we're not in the tribulation, but why do I show you this too? Because what I showed you economically that's happening, this is where you end up. There is a gap. The gap that's forming right now goes into the tribulation. And it will be a gap globally of the elites and everyone else has nothing. That's what the Bible is saying. And you're watching it develop right in front of your very eyes. The gap. I showed you the gap. Okay? Now, how do you see the gap? Let me explain. So obviously, this is a rider of the seal, the 4 horsemen and there's 6 seals, and the first one is the Antichrist coming on the scene. Then it's war, and then this is famine, and basically everyone's poor. And the black represents death in that sense, and starvation. Okay, so when you see a quart of a wheat for a denarius, basically a denarius was a day's wage. Okay. And so you have a little quart of wheat, and basically is saying it will take you, by the time it reaches this point, a whole day's worth of work to get one meal. A quart of wheat, which is a more expensive grain. Now, if we go to a lesser expensive grain, barley, it says you'll get 3 quarts for barley for a day's wage. Okay, so basically it's saying everyone on the planet is working all day long to get one meal. To get one meal. That's how expensive things have become. That's how bad the inflation has went. That's how bad, this food, scarcity, all this other stuff has went. But what about these elites? Well, it's right there. And do not harm the oil and the wine. There's the gap. So everyone else is scrambling for a day's wage, but the elites have the oil and wine. What do you mean? Well, it's real simple. You have to know the background of people owning property in the Middle East. And the elites, it was the rich people that could grow olive trees and could grow vineyards. The common peasant in Israel, anybody could grow barley and wheat on their property and feed themselves. But only the rich had trees and vines to produce the fruit and the olives. So that was wealthy. So when it says, do not harm the oil and wine, it is saying that the elite will have their stuff. Just like I just showed you. Zuckerbergs, the Bill Gates, they have everything. None of this is affecting them. They don't care. And this gap that we're seeing is continuing, and it's going to be on a global scale, just like I showed you on the Gatsby curve, the gaps. It'll be all the nations will have this gap between the elites and everyone else that has nothing. So the point is, this is where we're going. That's what Scripture says. So therefore, if I'm here, what must I do Because this is not just a bunch of information for you to say, okay, it's getting real bad. Oh no, what you're supposed to do is make preparations for yourself just in case you have to go through some of this. Because yes, the rapture could happen tonight, and it's all for nothing, that what I just talked about. But what if we're here after next year, or the year after, or the next 5 years? Let me ask you this question. If you're going to have to be here another 5 years, and again, that could change tonight. What does that look like for you economically in the next 5 years? Or how about the next 2 years? What does that look like economically if the prices keep going the way they're going? What does that look like for your bank account? What does that look for your retirement? Does that mean I have to go back to work? Does that mean I got to get another job? Does that mean what? I have to move to a different state to kind of escape even it's happening here? I don't know. You need to really start thinking about what's happening economically, because the majority of people are ignoring what's going on. And I can tell you, a tsunami is coming and they're going to get caught. They're going to get smoked in this economically. And again, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to save all your wealth. Don't think that. Don't think that at all, that you can save all your wealth. But at least you can minimize the impact if they switch. And that's all we're trying to say is you want to minimize it as much as you possibly can, because if a wise person sees a pit, he avoids it. If you see this coming, if you see a digital currency, let's do what we can to sustain ourselves as best we can. So I want you to think economically. Again, what is biblical wealth? Why is China buying gold? Gold and silver and precious stones are considered biblical wealth. Real estate, land is considered biblical wealth. Tangible assets are considered biblical wealth. I'm just throwing these out there. I'm just throwing them out there. Cash in your wallet is not considered biblical wealth. Tokenization of your property is not biblical wealth. Assets are. Things that you can divide, store of value, all those kinds of things, right? You got to be thinking in those terms to weather the storm. And my thing is, let's get the warning out. We're not crazy, because this is all coming out of the news. We're not making this up. But I think it's our job. If we know something's coming, we need to warn people. We need to tell them, hey, what's going on? You need to be careful. So anyway, we got to get running. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can understand about what you're doing in the world. We see it right in Scripture, right in front of our very eyes, where this is heading. And it's not going to be arrested. It's not going to be stopped. It's going all the way to the seal judgment. So, Father, help us to have wisdom in our personal level, on our personal economics that we run. Help us to be wise in managing what you've given us. And ultimately, we know you'll take care of us. We know you're going to provide, but we're going to buy insurance too at the same time. We're not going to be dumb. We're not going to throw ourselves off a temple and expect you to catch us. So help us to balance that wisdom with trusting in you at the same time, Father. And help us also to be a watchtower for people, to warn them and to alert people, hey, you need to pay attention. And so, Father, bless us now as we go. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.